Hello and welcome back to Handheld Computing. Today we're having a look at the HTC Advantage, or the Athena as it was called when it was released in the US. It was released in February 2007, a mere 4 months before the groundbreaking iPhone. This unique form factor with magnetic keyboard which can be used as a screen protector is somewhat of an anomaly. Too big and heavy to be a true pocket PC, and too small a keyboard to be considered one of the handheld PCs, this large phone running Windows Mobile, not to be confused with Windows Phone, which was a little late to market, was touted as the most powerful portable office. Compared with other Windows Mobile devices of the time, such as this Acer N300, the HTC Advantage is massive. Weighing in at a whopping 356 grams, it wasn't going to easily fit in your pocket. It is powerful though. Its Intel PAX processor runs at 624 MHz. It has a whopping 128 meg of RAM. It also has 256 megabytes of flash storage, about 90 of which is available to the user, as well as an 8 GB micro drive. And if that's not enough storage, you can add a mini SD card. On top of all of that, it's got a built-in GPS. It has Bluetooth 2.0 and, as was becoming standard at the time, built-in Wi-Fi. For the phone component, it's a 3G phone with HSPA for rapid data transfer. Let's take a look at the unit itself. So the first thing that stands out is obviously this massive 5-inch screen. This is VGA resolution and full colour. We've got a front camera. We've got 3 programmable buttons, a joystick for selecting things, which you can click in as an action button, and we've got the microphone at the bottom. On the top there isn't anything, it's just blank. On this side we've got the VGA out connector, so you can actually connect it up to a monitor. We've got the charger / sync cable, a headphone jack, and we've got an up-down slider to control the volume. On the flip side we've got the power button, a button to control the wireless settings, pressing and holding is the record function. We've got the camera button, silo for the stylus, and the speaker. On the back we've got a 3 megapixel camera with flash, a reset button, and then on the bottom we've got this magnetic connector, and we've got a slot for the battery to go into, the SIM card, and a mini SD. The unit has this magnetic keyboard. The keys have very little travel as it's really flat, but it is usable, and it connects using a magnet. Like so. The magnetic connection's quite firm, but it's not quite enough to walk around thumb typing unless you support it using your fingers at the back. When not in use, the keyboard doubles up as a screen protector. So the battery itself has this slightly odd clip on the top, but it is otherwise pretty standard. The clip pulls out so that you can get some leverage to pull it back out of the HTC once it's in, and it's got a slight pin on the back so that once it's put in and pushed to, it'll stay put. It can't be moved by mechanical means. The battery door itself just slides open, not particularly easy. That's the SIM card slot just there. That's the mini SD slot just there, and then if you pull it up, that's where the battery goes. It does mean the mini SD card is not particularly easy to access. So unlike a lot of pocket PCs and handheld PCs and Palms, it's not easy just to pop the card out and put it in your computer. So I can show you the full boot process. I'm going to do a hard reset. This is done by holding down the volume key and at the same time pressing the reset button in. Like so. Keep hold of the down button and we should get a message. Yes, there we are. The action key is pressing down on the joystick. We've got the option to erase the micro drive. We might as well do it. It won't work. So we press the command key and then we press the power button. And we're in. So we're met with the fact that there's no SIM card in at the moment and that we want the email setting up, but we're not going to bother. The large, well, for the time, 5-inch display is full VGA, but the standard screen resolution is set to 240 by 320. And since it's nearly always in landscape mode because of the keyboard, we lose an awful lot of screen real estate to the menu and the taskbars. That said, certainly on full power, the screen is very bright and is viewable in daylight. It's not brilliant in daylight, but it's not bad. When using the keyboard, the angle of the screen is fixed, and of course that's just to keep it stable on the magnetic mount. The angle is a little bit steeper than I would like, but it is usable. As I mentioned before, the keyboard has almost no travel, so having sounds on for key clicks is an absolute must. For short amounts of typing, it's not too bad. I wrote most of the script on the Advantage, but for obvious reasons, I prefer the Janada keyboard. On the keyboard itself, we've got the two phone buttons. Then we've got the Internet Explorer button. It's currently set to Opera. We'll revisit that in a minute. There are two dashes. These correspond to the two screen menu options, depending on which program you're in. There's a window key next to that. Unfortunately, the window key shortcuts don't work, i.e. Windows and E doesn't open an Explorer window. Then we've got the Messages button. This takes you to a combined text, MMS and email account messaging. We've got the OK button, which minimizes any open windows. And then there's what appears to be a backlight button. So it clicks, so the button clearly works, but it doesn't seem to function. Other than that, it's a standard QWERTY design. We've got standard arrow keys, Enter, Delete, and then we've also got Control, Tab, Shift. The Control Z, Control Y, Control X, C and V all work as expected. In addition, the blue button here lets you access caps lock, enter numbers or symbols from the keyboard, access the symbol menu to input directly from the selection box, as well as creating page up, down and opening an Explorer box. So while the keyboard's not the best for typing on, the use of these shortcuts does mean that sat at a desk it is very useful. As mentioned before, the keyboard doubles up as a screen protector. When in screen protector mode, it's got this clear window at the bottom and it shows phone notifications and the status of your battery, etc. when you press the power button. Don't be fooled, however, the whole screen is actually turned on. This isn't going to save you any power. The other main option for input is, of course, the stylus. I have to say, for such a big device, this is a very disappointing stylus. Not only is it very small and very thin, but it's also got a fair bit of flex to it, so it's not particularly usable. In order to synchronize this with Windows XP, you need ActiveSync 4.5 as it won't work on 3.8. This can be a slight issue if you run other older devices which require 3.8, and I do. It will work on Windows 10 with Windows Mobile Device Center, but you first need to disable the advanced network functionality in the control panel. There is a single issue with synchronization, and that is if you put in a multi-day, all-day event, it actually blocks it out as a complete set of time, as opposed to showing it just in the top box. This doesn't happen when you input it on the device, it's something to do with when synchronizing Outlook. As with other Windows CE devices, this will sync with Outlook up to 2013, but you need to make sure it's the 32-bit edition. So let's take a look at the pre-installed software. So part of HTC's upgrade is this shortcut bar here. So we've got a battery indicator / shortcut to the power display. We've got a screen rotation shortcut which lets you go through landscape and portrait modes. There's a wireless control panel shortcut, a backlight shortcut, GPS shortcut and VGA out shortcut. These are all very handy to have. We've still got a pretty standard home screen, so we've got the access to the world clock, some information about the owner, messages. It's the same as the link from the keyboard, so it lets you access text, MMS and email. And finally we have the agenda. Tapping the left side takes you through the various views and back to the beginning. On the other side we've got various options, new appointments, etc. We can only beam things via Bluetooth now as there's no infrared on here. You can go back to today, go to a date, and there's various edit tools. Now we've got an item in, we can see how it shows up in the various views. As we move to the day view, we can see it inputs it with the hour blocks. Moving here, we can see it's highlighted at the moment. You can use the arrow keys to highlight other items if there were others, and it'll show you what they are here. Tapping on it brings it up and then you can edit it. In the year view, it just shows up as a block of time, and tapping on it takes you back to the day view. Heading back to the home screen, and we can see it's added it as an upcoming appointment. Next, we'll have a quick look at contacts. As you can see, there's a shortcut down the bottom, and that's an adjustment in Windows Mobile. So in here, you can search either using the row across the top, or you can start typing in the top box, and it will search for them. So as you can see, it's easy enough to enter a new contact. We've also gained the ability to add pictures to contacts. Obviously, I don't actually have a picture of Harry Potter, so we'll just pop that one in, add a phone number, and hit OK. So while there is a picture in there, it doesn't show as a thumbnail in this view, but tapping on it brings up the picture that we've added. And once back in the contact, it's easy enough to edit them. There are all the usual options, including work details, home details, emails, and then there's birthdays, anniversaries, spouse information, children information, and of course a notes area. Not much has changed since Pocket PC. Heading up to the start menu, we've got shortcuts for Mobile Office, Calendar, Contacts, Internet Explorer, Messaging, and the phone. You can adjust these in the settings so you can have whichever programs you want up there. We're going to come back to Mobile Office shortly. We're just going to head into programs and have a look at what's here. So in here we've got a shortcut to games, of which we've got Bubble Breaker and Solitaire, pretty standard. We've got a shortcut to Active Sync settings. We've got built-in Adobe Reader. I've already loaded a document. Actually, it's the user manual for this device. As you can see, it's just about usable, but you can't see a full page at once because the screen is too small. For very detailed PDFs, it can take a while to actually load. We've got an audio manager, which acts as an onboard MP3 player, Bluetooth Explorer, which lets you access file folders on other Bluetooth devices. We've got the calculator, of course, pretty standard. And then we've got access to the camera. So we'll come back to the camera in a few minutes. File Explorer, internet sharing settings, printer settings, Messenger. Sadly, the servers are turned off for that, so I can't demonstrate it. Midlet Manager, I'm not entirely sure what this is. Perhaps you could let me know in the comments below. We'll have a quick look at Notes, because it's changed quite a bit. So Notes is still your main audio manager and note taker, but it's lost quite a few of the functions that we gained in Pocket PC. So while you can still write on the screen, of course, that is the point of being able to make a note, what you can't do is change the thickness of your pen. You can't get it to recognize it and convert it into text, and you also can't create any template files. You can of course still use the keyboard to type in notes, and you can add audio recordings within Notes itself. I do think the loss of templates and the inability to change the thickness of the line is a bit of a loss. Next we've got the Opera browser, we'll look at that later. We've got pictures and videos for viewing any installed pictures or videos. So these are the sample files here, and of course it'll view any pictures or videos taken with your camera. We've got Quick GPS, we have a link to that elsewhere, and this is to download files so that the GPS can update a little bit faster. We've got SAP settings, I really don't know what that's for, comments below please. We've got a search function, which is always handy, Sim Manager, streaming media, which I haven't actually tried, and the Task Manager. Now the Task Manager is somewhat disappointing, so I'm just going to add a couple of tasks and then show you what I mean. So now we've got a few tasks in. If we double tap them, you can edit them and add some details. So you can set a priority. We've got the usual high, low or normal status, and then we've got start dates. So let's put this as a start date for next month. You can then set a reminder, blah, 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 that's fine. Under menu, we can do new beam delete tasks, edit, sort by, so we can sort by subject, priority, start date, etc. and filter. Now, this is where the problem is. If I filter by active tasks, then what I want to see is only tasks that are currently due. But you'll see this hasn't disappeared. As a Power Task user, I often set things for future dates. For example, I might want to put in my MOT. So let's say my MOT isn't due until next April. So I might make it start at the beginning of March so that I've got plenty of time to get on and sort it out, but it might be due on the 16th of April. I might put a remind me in, so at the beginning of March it's going to set an alarm and it'll pop up and remind me. All good. But now, instead of that only popping up in March when it's due, it's there all the time. This isn't very helpful and just leads to having a never-ending to-do list. Rant over. Then we've got Voice Recorder. Voice Recorder has less settings in terms of sound quality. It's also a little bit laggy when you kind of start it up and when you stop it and then try and play things. I don't think it's as good as the voice recorder in Notes, so it's a bit redundant really. Then we've got the setup for voice speed dial, Windows Live, which of course doesn't exist anymore, Windows Media, which allows you to play videos and music. So we'll just update the library. So this is the sample video. And if we go back to the library, so I have converted one of my previous videos, and to be fair, it looks pretty good. We can pop it on full screen. It is only recorded in quarter VGA, so it's a little bit grainy, but you know, it's pretty good playback speed. And the sound's not too bad. The other thing worth noting is that if you simply OK it, it continues to play in the background. So just to bear in mind, if you are using it, you can end up with a bit of a battery drain. Then last of all, we've got a zip program. So this is very handy, of course, if you have a lot of files, you can zip them and unzip them. It's very straightforward to use. So let's have a look at the Office suite. So we've now got Excel Mobile, Word Mobile and PowerPoint Mobile. The shift from Pocket Excel and Pocket Word to Word Mobile and Excel Mobile is quite an important change. So we've gone from cut down versions that require conversion before opening on a computer to versions that are compatible with their desktop counterparts. The increased compatibility means you can email documents to clients on desktops and they can open them natively, which is something these days we just expect. Although the increased compatibility is a major bonus, it's not fully compatible. I've produced a group of sample files to show you some of the limitations. So let's have a look at Excel. So we'll just zoom out and you can see. So Excel Mobile supports the inclusion of charts, and these can be created and edited on the go. However, you'll see there's nothing else here. If I show you what should be in my sample, here we are. You'll see there should be a text box and there should also be a picture. Neither of these work and the chart itself was simplified. So while it is compatible with your computer directly, it's not fully compatible. It doesn't support the new file format. It won't open password protected files. That said, being able to add charts and graphs is a big move forward from Pocket Excel. So we'll have a look at Word Mobile. So if we open a new file, you can see it takes a moment to load a new file up. We've got the usual input options. We're currently on block recognizer, but we've got on-screen keyboard, a letter recognizer, symbol pad, and of course transcriber, which allows you to write anywhere on the screen. Transcriber is very easy to use and its recognition is generally quite good. So this one is saved as a standard doc file. And as you'll see, it opens fine. So as you'll see, it deals with the various fonts, pictures, highlighting, tables, but it won't deal with word art. So we've got the usual options in terms of view. We can wrap to window, we can zoom in and out, and of course even at 50% because of the high resolution screen, it looks pretty good. Here's what this sample should have looked like. So as you can see, everything was fine apart from the word art. This sample is a docx, and as you'll see, it won't open it. It also won't open password protected files. So this is a sample PowerPoint I made. Give it a second to load. So it works well. Unfortunately, unlike Pocket PowerPoint, there's no ability to rearrange the slides order or rewrite anything. You can't add new slides. You can't create new PowerPoint presentations on the go. But because it does have a VGA out, of course you can show them on the go. It's a real shame it doesn't have more functionality, but there we are. We'll have a look at some settings. So not too much has changed. We've got a button setting. So of course we can alter what the programmable buttons do. At the moment we've got the camera button, Opera on the button 2 and the comms manager button 3. Pressing and holding brings up the record function. We've got the speed controls for the up and down controls for the sound. Input options, so you can decide what you want as your standard input. We've got word completion, and we've got the options for the voice recording format. This applies to notes, it does not apply to the voice recorder, and it's got a fair few options. You can also set the default zoom level for when you open a new note and the default level for when you're typing in notes. You will notice there are no options to customize the buttons on the keyboard, which is a real shame. We've got the lock option, which allows you to add a PIN or password. We've got the menu option, so as I say, you can tick or untick any items here that you want when you hit the start bar. We've got owner information, which of course shows up on the home page. We've got a couple of settings for the phone. We've got the sounds and notification settings. As I say, I always have the hardware button to click on this because otherwise when you're using the keyboard, there's literally no feedback. And then in sound and notifications, you can change all your sounds for when it syncs, when it has an error, when it calls, etc., as usual. Under today, we've got a couple of options for the background, including using pictures as the background. And then under items, you can choose what you want on the main screen. No point having Windows Live Search. So if we head back now, you'll see tasks should have popped up. Yeah, and it says there's 2 active tasks. Tapping on it, of course, it shows 4 because it doesn't differentiate things from the future. Rant over. Last but not least, we've got voice speed dial, which we've already seen under the programs. In system, we've got about, which just tells us which version we're on. So this is Windows Mobile 6, which is confusingly OS build 5.2. There's the processor and the amount of memory we've got available, the device ID, and a bit about copyrights. Then we've got the backlight settings. So we're currently on full brightness. It can go very dark indeed. In fact, it's pretty much unusable at that setting. We've got a managed certificates. I assume this is for internet certificates. As you'll see, there's quite a few in there. We've got a clear storage option. This allows you to format the microdrive, clocks and alarms. So in here we've got access to the world clock. We can set alarms and we can decide if we want to display the clock in all programs or not. There's a customer feedback option. This doesn't work, of course, the servers are shut down. Some device information. Again, we've got a list of hardware attributes, identity, and a bit about incoming and outgoing calls. There's an encryption option. This allows you to encrypt storage cards, so that applies to the microdrive, but it also applies to the mini SD should you add one. Not very useful if you intend to transfer files via the mini SD. We've also got error reporting. Servers shut down. You can add an external GPS. There's another option to format the microdrive, and there's a key lock option. So the key lock just means that none of the keys will then turn the device on other than the power button. Moving down, we've got memory. This is the only way to turn off running programs. So running into here, you can then stop all, and you'll see we've launched a few while looking at the device. We can move to storage cards, and again under main it shows us what memory is in use. We've got some settings for the microphone. This allows you to set the microphone to automatically adjust. We've got power options, nothing exciting there. Some regional settings, I've left it as US from rebooting it. Add and remove programs. Screen calibration, task manager, which gives you a couple of options. So you can turn programs off by tapping and holding the X, or you can have them turned off when you tap the X. This does help with memory management and is made by HTC, so it isn't on other Windows mobile devices. We've got the TV out settings. Unfortunately, I don't have the cable for it, so I can't do a demonstration of that. The view flow settings, this really is to do with the internet, so we'll come back to that when we look at Opera later. And finally, Windows Update. Guess what? Servers offline. Under the connections, we've got a beam option. This doesn't exist on this machine because it's not got an infrared, but it's still there as an option. Bluetooth, we've got the comms manager, which we've not looked at. If I take it out of flight mode, we've got all the usual options that you'd expect to have on a mobile phone. So we've got the phone, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, push notifications, data connection, and of course, active sync connection. Then we've got a number of connections options. This one lets you set up a connection. 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 This is for your SMS connection. We've already quickly looked at the USB to PC. This needs disabling if you're going to connect it to your computer, otherwise it won't sync. And then we've got the Wi-Fi and a wireless LAN setting. So let's have a look at the camera. So the launch button's on the side, you just press it and it boots up quite quickly. In fact, Microsoft specified that your camera had to launch within a second. So we're in the default setup for the rear camera. It's currently set at 3 megapixels. This is your zoom option. We've got various settings here. A focus setting, we can increase and decrease the brightness of the image, change the focal point, add flash, white balance automatically or not, and set a timer. This shows which memory card we're using. So at the moment it's internal memory. I've got no other memory cards installed and my microdrive does not work. We'll talk a bit more about that later. To swap to the front camera, you press this button. In the rear camera mode, we've got a few options. So if we scroll across, we can swap to video, and of course this indicates how much time you've got or how many photos you can take. We've got multi-message service. This mode is specifically for taking contact photos. Then we've got a couple of these templates, so you can take a photo and of course put a person inside one of these. We've got a panorama setting. I'll show you how that works in a moment. Quite clever. Sports mode, burst mode, and you'll notice that it swaps to a large photo when we move to burst mode, and that's because the CPU can't handle 3 megapixels in burst mode. So the zoom function here doesn't do anything while we're in 3 megapixel mode, and that's because there's no optical zoom. But swap to small photo, and suddenly you can zoom right in, up to 8 times. So depending on the size of the photo you're taking, that determines how much you can zoom. Under settings, we've got a few options, so we can set the timer, of course, set the flash, white balance, and here we've got effects. So we can have grayscale, sepia, cool, not sure why you'd want your photo to look blue, and negative. This shows you the resolution. Obviously we've scrolled through it on top and how good the quality of the photo is. This is the storage area. As I say, it's in main memory as there's no memory card at the moment, and this is where it light balances. Then we've got mode, which we've already looked at, and some settings. So although it's got a capture format setting, we can only save JPEGs. You can choose if you want the shutter sound, and you can choose the shoot option. So I've got it set so you full press to actually take the photo and half press will focus. You can have a grid on while you take the photo. I want the backlight to stay on. We've got a review duration, so when you take a photo, it pops the photo up on the screen and it stays there at the moment for 3 seconds before going back to the camera, and that can be removed or up to 10 seconds. I'm not really sure why you'd want a full 10 seconds. Then we've got flicker adjustment. I've just left that to auto, but it can be set to 50 or 60 Hertz. This allows you to set a prefix so you can have it save it with the date or the date and time. That's the counter, so it's the number of photos we've taken, and you can adjust the hue, saturation and sharpness in here. And last but not least, we've got a help and an about. So this is an HTC program. So because there's only an accelerometer, when taking panoramic pictures, what the device does is after you've taken the first picture, it gives you an overlay to line up, like so. It then simply stitches the 3 images together. Obviously it doesn't work that well close up, but as you can see from these pictures, it works quite well in the distance. I think you'll agree it's a pretty clever system and significantly reduces the strain on the CPU. It is limited to 3 photos, so you can't get a surround shot, nor can you simply do 2. But all the same, it's quite a neat function. The front camera was never designed for taking selfies, although of course you can. It was really intended for Skype or video calls. So this is an example of the audio and visual quality of the front-mounted camera. I'm sure you'll agree it's not exactly amazing. But to simply be able to do video calls on the go in 2007 was quite exceptional, especially when you consider the cost of mobile data back then. So let's have a look at Opera browser. So neither Internet Explorer nor Opera are particularly useful on the modern web, and that's because everything has changed in the last 15 years. We'll just have a look at some of the settings. So we can have new windows, so we can create a new window and then we can go through the various windows and close them. On the display option, we've got various zoom settings. I'm set to 130% at the moment. We can choose to have it on full screen. You can have the screen in desktop mode. You can try and fit the web page to the screen, and you can have a single column mode. In image mode, it just highlights any images that are there. We've got some encoding options, and under tools, we've got bookmarks, downloads, some more settings, so you can set your default home page. I've set this to identify it as a computer as opposed to a handheld device. We've got a jump to page content. We can block pop-ups. We can clear the cache. So we do have security protocols, SSL 2, 3, and TLS 1. We can also set proxy server settings, and we've got a couple of options whether we want JavaScript and animations, etc. We've also got a help and an about. So this is version 8.65. There is a newer version available. As you can see, it's opened that in a new tab. We'll get rid of that and go back to our Google page. So we're just going to do a quick Google search. So here we are, here's the Google search. So you'll notice up in this top space here, we've got this circle with the dot in the middle, and that's the accelerometer for the view flow. So what we can do is actually tilt the computer and it will scroll down and then it will stop and we can scroll up. So when using in the hand, that's quite a useful feature as it saves a lot of tapping on the screen, particularly for big web pages. One of the unfortunate things about Opera web browser is it insists on secure connections. So unfortunately, we constantly get this error. So while it's easy enough to connect to a network as this device supports WPA2 protocols, it's not that easy to do any useful amount of browsing. So as I've already mentioned, the microdrive in my unit has failed. This is quite a common issue as microdrives themselves are actual miniature hard disks. So while the read-write head will normally swing straight out of the way, they are still prone to vibrations, bumps and knocks. I initially thought I would simply swap out the microdrive for a compact flash card. However, the 8GB drive contained in these units is not in the standard compact flash type 2 format. Instead, it's the more rectangular ZIF connector format. You can still buy them. I found a couple on eBay. The cheapest I could find though was £170, so I don't really consider it worthwhile. It may be possible to get a converter so you could replace it with a mini, micro or standard SD card. Instead, I saved a lot of effort by simply buying a mini to micro SD adapter. This allowed me to put a 32GB micro SD in and the device reads it perfectly well. Just be aware though that if you are going to buy one of these or any other device containing a microdrive, there's a fairly high chance that the microdrive will have failed. From a design point of view, this is a sizable unit, but the addition of the keyboard makes it at home on a desk as it does in your hand. The skinny stylus is a little bit disappointing, and I have to say the record button is in an awkward position no matter which way you hold the device, so it's not ideal for taking those quick voice memos. On the plus side, the screen is bright, big and easy to use. The battery life is also good. I get 5 hours on this unit even though it's quite old, although that is with all the wireless turned off. If you owned one of these or lusted after one back in the day, I'd love to hear from you. Pop a comment below. For me personally, I think this is a powerful machine that's crippled by its operating system and stock software. Microsoft continued insistence on using a full VGA display to display quarter VGA images just seems ridiculous. While the increased compatibility with the Word and Excel programs built in is excellent and of course makes it easier to trade files with your desktop counterparts, it is unfortunate that they don't support the newer XLS and DocX standards, which came out in the same year. I welcome the return of PowerPoint on the device. It never made it to Pocket PC or palm-sized PC. It's just unfortunate that they didn't allow any editing abilities. Overall, I would conclude it's a fairly disappointing machine. However, with the addition of some third-party software and a couple of tips and tricks, this can become a very useful device indeed. And we will be looking at how to get the most out of your HTC Advantage in a couple of videos' time. I have skipped the phone functionality in this video. HTC didn't push it as a phone. I think it's almost seen as an add-on, and of course really it's there for the mobile data connection. I was also trying to keep this video fairly short. Epic fail. I do think this particular device deserves a proper attempt as a laptop and phone replacement, so maybe that's a video for me to make next year. I do hope a few of you actually made it to this part of the video. If you did, a like and a subscribe would be advantageous. You see what I did there? My name's Hugh. This is Handheld Computing. Thanks for watching.